Welcome along to Memory Issues Month. I'm chatting with Gill Bauer. Gill, do you want to just tell us a little bit about what you do?
Okay, so I'm a kinesiologist. I also teach Chinese traditional medicine and Qigong. I work with the acupuncture points and the meridians and those energy systems. And they all relate perfectly to perimenopause and menopause and the topic of memory today. So coming from a holistic approach.
Excellent. So I think a lot of people find that sort of suddenly not really being able to remember things and thinking they may be, you know, losing the plot or whatever, for want of a better term, can be a really scary symptom, can't it?
Yep, I remember it's not just to do with the perimenopause as well. We can go through these at different times in our life. I remember when I had my twins, and I remember going to Tesco's and packing my shopping into the back of the car, getting into my car and nearly leaving the car park. And I had this vague feeling that I'd forgotten something and I'd left the twins in the trolley. I'd packed the shopping and left the twins. So, you know, when we think about memory loss, we tend to think of it as like PMT women, perimenopausal women, you know, women going through pregnancy. But, you know, as we age, our memory and our concentration levels can alter. And when we're overwhelmed and we're stressed, so, you know, was my forgetting to pick up my twins when I was pregnant anything to do with hormones, or was it because I just wasn't sleeping? You know, so there's a real combination of issues that come up around this topic.
No, absolutely. And I mean, I see it so often in the group, you know, people going, oh my goodness, I thought I was getting early onset dementia because I can't remember anything, and And I think for a lot of women, there's almost a relief when they realize that this might be a hormonal thing rather than, you know, some rest of life, never going to remember anything ever again type thing.
Yep. And, you know, when we look at the 40 symptoms that we sort of work with continually, and, you know, number 15, number 16 and 17 are all about memory, concentration and focus. So when we start to look at this topic, we really got to break it down into subgroups as well so that we can have a look. And we have to remember everything starts with the brain, even hormones. So, you know, when we talk about perimenopause, we sort of think about, you know, blood, menstruation, and, you know, the ovaries and the genital areas, but, you know, that all begins up in here. The brain controls everything, and it's an organ that we neglect, and that needs a lot of time, a lot of care, and a lot of attention. And so we have to sort of always come back to the brain. You know, a lot of these 40 symptoms on here can be connected to, you know, the brain, and so we need to really focus on the health and well-being of this really important muscle and this really important organ, the brain.
Yeah. And what was I going to ask? So in terms of traditional Chinese medicine, obviously that looks at the whole body and looks at everything interconnected. So what's that telling us about memory?
Well, let's break down memory, concentration and focus. They're the three areas. So we've got memory, we've got concentration, and we've got focus. And different parts of the brain, we access different parts of the brain when we're, you know, doing different activities. So a quick look at the brain. Obviously, we've got different aspects. We've got the frontal lobe, we've got the back lobe, the parental lobes. All of these different parts of the brain organize different things. So smelling, touch, hearing, forgetting somebody's name. We could be really good at concentration, but we can forget people's names because that's a different part of the brain. When we're stressed, so there are really important acupuncture points on the forebrain, which is the frontal brain. So when we get stressed, we don't think straight, we just react. And so that we have to do is encourage blood flow into the frontal brain. And so there's a lot of points. These are called the ESR, emotional stress points, release points. And so for acupuncture, you might use a lot of needles in this part of the forebrain to bring the blood back to that area, and then we can react from a calm place. So let's have a look at what So when people are having issues, they need to be aware, is it memory? Is it concentration? Or is it focus? And they're all slightly different things. And so there are different ways that we can work. So from so part of the holistic approach is something called brain gym, and that works with all the different parts of the brain. So we've also got our right and our left side of our brains. So we've got, you know, the brain's sort of cut in half, and movement and blood flow is encouraged by breathing and by doing sort of physical exercises. So with our holistic approach, what we want to do is try and get this side of the brain, this body talking to this side, and this side crossing over, so that we have access to the whole of our brain. So a lot of the movements that we do are sort of getting using the bridge to access both hemispheres of the brain, so that we're working from 100% rather than, you know, just 50% or even just a small part of that area of the brain. And a lot of people are very right-handed dominant, and so we you know, having twins, I become ambidextrous, so that I don't know my left or my right, because I'm strong both sides. And so then I feel that I've got really good access to all parts of the brain. So that's just one small area that we focus on, and there's hundreds, and there's so many different protocols, and that would be really good in a workshop. So I do this great class where we work with color, memory, movement, breathing, crossing over, and even color. So today there's two colors that stimulate the brain. One is blue and one is red. Red will stimulate the brain, but blue will calm the brain so that you've got better recall. And so there's lots of different techniques. There's lots of things that we can do, and it's a great workshop. It's a fun workshop, and it's an interactive workshop.
Yeah, we'll have to at some point do an intake for that workshop for people from the hub, won't we? Because that sounds brilliant.
Brilliant.
So just bringing it back to kind of the day-to-day of, and just focusing on memory at this point, have you got any tips for people who are just, you know, suddenly struggling to remember the things that they need to do, or to recall words, recall names, all of those sorts of really simple things, without us going to, I know we could go in really deep here, but just sort of keeping it relatively low key kind of thing?
Okay, the number one thing is water. Your brain needs to be 80% hydrated of water. So, you know, that's the one nutrient that the brain really needs. And, you know, when we're not very good at keeping it fully hydrated. So drinking water and making sure that your brain is fully hydrated. With memory, sometimes what happens when we do it automatically is that, you know, we go into a room, we've gone to do something, we can't remember, and then we sort of retrace our steps. So one of the things that you can do to memory is go to the space where you originally had that experience or that thing that you learned. So that's why we tend to move into rooms, because we're in a room, we can't think. So then we go upstairs thinking, right, what I want is upstairs, and what I need is upstairs. And then that sometimes triggers the memory. And so sometimes we have to go back. So hypnotherapy, think about hypnotherapy. We take people back into a memory, and then they can remember things. Think about if you're recalling an incident, then you could have 10 people, all memories are going to record different aspects, and that's why they, you know, if there's an accident, or the police like multiple witnesses, because they're all going to have different recall and memory. And sometimes when they reenact an aspect, that's when the memory comes back. So that's why we start wandering off into different rooms, and we go upstairs and go, what did I come downstairs for? Then you go back upstairs, and then that's triggered your memory. So we do stuff instinctively anyways. And what women tend to do, especially through menopause, is we multitask. That is one of the worst things for lack of focus, lack of memory, and because we get overwhelmed. We've got, you know, the brain is jingle jangled with loads of different things that are going on. And what men do really well, and we sort of moan at men for doing this, but what we should learn to do more of is just focus on one task, give it our 100% focus and attention, and then, you know, that's how men tend to work. But women are juggling, especially when we get to perimenopause. We've got careers, we've got family, we've got children, we've got homes, we've got social lives, and we've got family that we look after. We are constantly multitasking, so it's any wonder that we have these issues. Add on to that hormone fluxes, add on to that any other issues, pain, discomfort that we might be going through. It's all going to be conducive to lack of focus, lack of concentration, and poor memory. But there is so much we can do.
So, as so often seems to be the case with these monthly topics, it's sounding from what you're saying like actually one of the first things we need to do is try and simplify life and try and manage stressors better.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, this is why these points come up. You know, these are they're just above your eyes, on your forehead, because we get overwhelmed. You know, we're multitasking. The brain is doing too many tasks at once. It's you know, the electrical impulses are just firing everywhere, and they're going to get confused. So it's simplifying things. You know, that's why we do the meditation. That's why we sort of slow down and do breathing. You know, when we're in that parasympathetic nervous system, which is the digestion, relaxation, sleep, then we've got a bit more clarity of thought. That's when we can meditate and have no thoughts. And that's a good way to calm the mind. So you can see why some of the more holistic protocols are really helping to calm everything down. But then we've got the flip side where people can't concentrate, can't really focus on a topic, and then we might need to stimulate the sympathetic nervous system and have that red. But there's sort of blue and red foods as well. So nutrition comes into this, breathing comes into this, you know, and making sure that you have good sleep, de-stressing yourself. So there's so many things that can come up with this.
And that's the thing, it's such a huge topic. You know, we could talk for hours about it. I have this is said intentionally, tongue-in-cheek, intentionally, but I sometimes feel like there's kind of a finite amount of storage in our heads, and once we've filled it up with, you know, 80s song lyrics and remembering the directions to places and all this, you sort of come to a point and go, I'm just gonna have to write stuff down because I'm on to overflow.
Well, we have over 60,000 thoughts every day. 60,000, and that could be just like, shall I have tea or shall I have coffee? Yeah. Shall I have something with my tea? Shall I have something with my coffee? That's the thought. So we've got these, if we're getting 60,000 thoughts, and think about all those electrical signals that are going to go through the brain. You know, that's why we get hot. That's why we get headaches. That's why we get tension. And so it's about maybe, and think about people when they get really stressed, how they overthink, over worry, over analyze things. That is draining our brain, really. And so we have to really, you know, quieten down the brain and have lesser thoughts, and maybe make them good quality thoughts. So if you're going through a negative trauma at the moment, or something, you know, who hasn't in the last 20 months, you know, worry, fear about the situation that's going on, you know, that's probably added to those 60,000 thought processes. And so when there's something like that going on, obviously we're going to be, our memory, our concentration, our focus is really going to be affected. So it's minimizing our thought processes, and being, you know, some people are really good at decision making, some are not. If you're not good at decision making, then, you know, you're adding to those. Shall I do this? Shall I do it? Or shall I go? Shall I not? Shall I wear that? Shall I, you know, so think about every day you're adding those thoughts. So being mindful of your thoughts, being mindful of what you're thinking, and taking time out to just slow everything down will really, really help.
Yeah, I think that's key to everything, isn't it? It's just creating that space to just breathe.
And you know, the problem is if we don't do that before we go to bed, the brain is just whizzing all through the night, you know. So it's like we've got to downgrade our brains, and that we do it by just monging out watching telly, really. And that's, you know, we are doing that to a certain degree. And some people might use substances like alcohol or other things and drugs and food to try and calm everything down and forget and switch off. But there again, there's loads of different acupuncture points, movements, exercises, breathing, meditation, things, all different foods that all help to do that.
Awesome. So if somebody wants to know more about your workshops or work with you, they can find your details on the website, can't they?
Absolutely. Yeah, just drop me a line if you want any questions about this. I'm happy to talk, and you know, talk more about focus. We've got in kinesiology, we've got so many different protocols that we help with clients. So learning is a big one. As we get older, we find that, you know, things are more difficult. We don't take in information really well. And so we sort of work with learning, recall memory. And we've got some really fun ways that we do that, because it's accessing different parts of the brain. So we do like so one of the things we might do is get the client to think about, if they were on the London Tube, how would they get from one point to the other? And they've got to navigate their way through the maze of the London Underground. That is lighting up the brain. So if you put your brain under, you know, a scan, your brain will be lighting up. So it's triggering, activating different parts of the brain. And so we've got all different types of protocols like that, simple, that will help that, you know, the neuron patterns connect. And learning new things, doing new things is definitely helps the brain to expand. But you were talking about too much space. What I used to do, I do a meditation where I literally open up my head and I store memory in the cloud, which is like the universe. And so then I don't have to have it all here. It's up there in the universe, in the cloud, and then I can easily download stuff when I want it, rather than keeping it all in here. So there's some really fun, interactive, and certain things, tools might work for some people and they might work better for others.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gill. That's been really, really informative.
Oh, well.